One of the topics that people always talk about on forums with headphones and speakers and anything audio related is bass. Bass is a big topic that I think is misunderstood in terms of what real bass sounds like. And I see in this for years and years and years in the two-channel side and the speaker side of things. And it's the same with headphones. It's like, you think about it, like, what is the reference for bass? Like, real bass, right? How many people know what real bass sounds like if you've only heard it through a pair of speakers in a room, right? Difficult, right? Difficult to have a reference for that, don't you think?
I suppose it is, yeah. Usually in your everyday life, there's not a lot of things that naturally produce a huge amount of bass or low frequency energy. And it can be really difficult to then know what is perfect, what's right, when it's not something you're super familiar with. I think maybe a bass drum or something like that, a kick drum, whatever. That's kind of, sort of as close as practical of a thing you get in kind of everyday life that you might hear. But even that's not copious quantities for the most part. You could get people with preferences that are looking for way more bass than what you would naturally hear. And it seems to be one of those things where a huge number of people can't seem to get enough. They want to keep turning the knob up more and more to get more bass.
Yeah, volume does tend to give you more bass. More volume, more bottom end, more top end too, though. So at some point, you run out of the ability to do that.
Well, the most natural thing you would hear, I think, for like just impact of bass and just power would be like salutes and fireworks, you know?
Yeah, that's true.
Boom! Like,
yeah,
that's
an explosion.
Yeah,
yeah, actually being there.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
that's way different than like seeing it on a YouTube video of something blowing up. You know?
Or in our younger days, you'd get like, M80s, K88s, little, quarter stick of dynamite. Boom! It does have quite an impact, an instant impulse to your body. You could feel the wave on some of the larger works, and that's true. That's real bass.
Yeah, that's hard to reproduce.
Yeah.
Like, when was the last time you heard speakers that sounded like the building was exploding?
They don't. Yeah, not possible. I don't think it's possible to do it that way. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, I suppose something like that is a reasonable example because you really get the sense of the power from the explosion. You get the sharpness of the pressure rise. Yeah. And it's really hard to replicate that with speakers unless you have an extraordinarily fast driver that is also capable.
You need a lot of power,
so much
too.
energy.
A lot of power.
I mean, the power of that shockwave is tremendous that hit you. You could do it.
You could do it.
You could do it. Thousands of watts, stacks of subwoofer cabinets, which you could get out of a concert and stuff like that. That kind of replicate. But you're not doing fire. They're not recording and playing by fireworks at concerts.
No.
They're beating on drums, which is a different kind of bass than that, but still similar. You have an impulse, you have an impact, and then you have the decay of the drum, and however the mic picks that up,
Well, the other example would be rockets. You can't replicate them you have to go
sheer
and see it. Yeah.
Isn't it like 180 dB or something like that?
Pretty
Depends
loud.
how close you are, but they're loud.
You can't, there's nothing that will reproduce that kind of noise except another rocket.
Yeah.
They do sound intense in person.
I don't think anyone's ever made a rocket for a home theater system.
No, I don't know if there's value
play
in
at
that.
different frequencies.
Could be trouble.
Control the rocket.
An explosion subwoofer?
Yeah, right. It only works once.
Oh, yeah.
It's like Back to the Future.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay,
yeah. Marty hits it. That had to be cool one time.
It's like that, yeah.
Yeah, that's hard to reproduce.
Oh, it's like a 4D movie. Like, all the explosions, you have actual explosions set up, so it only works for that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to reload all these shells.
Well, what was that movie with the submarine movie from back in the day?
U-571.
U-571. That had pretty good sound. I heard that on a pretty big system, multi-channel system. I think every speaker had a sub, a big sub. And that was a pretty cool... The depth charges in that movie were freaking really good, but you had to have some subs.
Yeah.
Otherwise, forget it. It's solid.
Yeah, I remember, listening to it at the little sub that you had. Yeah. And it's just like, you just hear it dying over there.
Yeah.
It's a huge room and just like...
Yeah. At least 2 good 13 inchers, if
even
not,
that.
But yeah, you need like 4. I'd say 4 would do it in a room.
Depends on the room size.
Yeah, true. You got to have some power. And we're talking a couple thousand watts per sub, it'll do a pretty good job. But that's what it takes, right, for that movie to reproduce. And when you get to that level, though, when you hear something like that, it is scary. Like I remember we did it at a show once, at a trade show in the middle of the CES floor. We played that movie in a kind of like a makeshift room that they had in the middle of the convention hall, But bottom line is we had these huge subs, and people would come in there, and they would actually, some women were with their husbands, and they had to leave. They were scared. If they were actually fearful, because you're watching a movie with guys stuck in a sub, which is, I guess, if you're kind of
claustrophobic.
Yeah, right. It can be an issue right there. And then now you're being surrounded by these booms, explosions, right, from outside the sub, and now you feel like you're there, so much so that you got to leave. I get that.
That's not a usual problem.
No, yeah. But to do that with headphones, well, that would be, not going to happen, right? Unless you have those subs in a room and you happen to have the headphones on your head. But anyway, that type of bass, again, very difficult to duplicate. So, when you hear about these bass heads or guys that really like bass, it's like, what are they actually trying to do? Like, what are they reproduce? Do they know what they're actually trying to get at? What's their end goal there with a bass response? I don't know.
I don't think there really is an end goal. I think the trouble is in high-end audio, it's really hard to get a lot of really good bass. Now, you can get a lot of bass. It's really easy. You get a lot of subs, you crank them up, you'll get bass, no problem. But as it turns out, it's quite difficult to get very good bass. And especially in headphones, it's one of the things that tends to be very challenging to get done right in a reasonable volume level. And I suppose it's open to interpretation how much volume people are looking for. People have very different views on that one, because if you look at what measures flat according to most traditional standard targets, a lot of people tend to want more. The less trained observers tend to want pretty much as much bass as you could throw at them. They're always turning the knob up, but there does seem to be a bit of bias, and it seems to be the higher end listeners tend to prefer the bass cracked down a smidgen. But it's hard to say if that's because they don't want the bass to interfere or because that's all they want.
Well, that is part of the problem.
Bleeding into the mids and such.
Yeah. I mean, it's a combination of issues. It's the driver itself. It's the room or the area that's around it, surrounding it. And that's whether it be between your head and the ear, and the within the ear pad, or whether it's in a room. Rooms are a huge issue because rooms are highly affected by the bass that's played within them. They have, depending on their dimensions, length, width, and depth, and you could look this up if you want. There's calculators for this. But you set up room modes or bass modes within the room that either cause nulls or peaks of the bass response at various frequencies, and they're usually multiples. Like you might have say you got a peak at 32, you'll have one at 64, you'll have one at 128. And so, when you're really exciting the room with bass, the room being excited multiplies that effect and creates its own bass response. And you hear, for most people, unless you have a very specialized room, the bass within the room, you're hearing more of the room than you are the actual speaker driver, which is another issue altogether.
Yeah, I ran into that setting up my sub. It's sealed, so it's not making any port noise or anything.
Yeah.
And I was moving it around, and I hit a point where, there would be bass, and I could hear things like rattling around me, but I was in a null, and it was dead, But
Right.
I hear the whole room shaking.
Yeah, you
but
could
it's
walk
dead
3
silent.
feet,
Yeah,
and all of a
you go
sudden
moving
it gets
forward.
louder.
Yeah.
And you can walk, and if you could try that, if you play a constant tone with subwoofers, so you put out 50 hertz or 40 hertz, 50 is probably a good number. You don't blow things up too bad.
Mm-hmm.
And you walk around the room and you listen to this 50 hertz, you'll find that every so often it gets quieter, then it gets louder, then it gets quieter, especially if you walk the room boundaries. And you'll find that, depending on your seated position and depending on where you place the subs, this affects bass. But see, that's the problem, right? There's no reference room that people use. There is no such thing. So everyone could have the same sub. People could talk about having this particular sub, but within a room, they all sound different. Right. So then what's your reference for bass? You don't know. It's not possible to know that. It's kind of like when we talked about the reference flat in a video back way again. What's flat? What is flat? We came to the conclusion that there is no such thing really.
There is a solution with subs, though.
Yeah?
Yeah. People just get more of them. That's what it seems like people usually do. It's like, I got another one. It helped out.
It's a good idea.
Yeah.
Well, because each one works less hard, if that's a way to put it. They're not working as difficult. You need to, you can turn down, with more of them, you could turn down each individual sub. They're not as taxed. And it actually, doing that, having multiple subs in a room, reduces the effect of the room modes.
Right.
Because you're not exciting one part of the room dramatically with one sub. By turning them down, you're exciting the room less, and it's spread out in space. So the room modes are actually spread out too at different frequencies. So it's not, you kind of, if you had 10 subs in a room and each one affected slightly, a 5 hertz difference between effect, right? Think about it, right? You kind of, at some point, you kind of level it out.
Yeah.
You know, this one's at 45. Well, that one's doing it at 50. One's at 55. Okay, so now it's not as much of an issue where you have these peaks and nulls in a room.
It's not perfect, but
yeah. But anyway, talking about headphones, though, same deal. It's like, headphones. I think that it's a different problem because we're talking pressure. They got to create pressurization to try to mimic what people hear in real life, and you need power and pressure to do that. And these headphones that are running on 100 milliwatts or something can't create pressure. Can't. Not enough power there to drive it. They can create the bottom end, but that initial impact, that explosive nature of real life things like I said, fireworks, can't do it with a lower power device.
Well, I think that's why people like really high powered amps on headphones. They just got that limitless power.
Yeah, right. I mean, that helps a lot to create a more lifelike, in terms of the initial impact of the bass, the pressure, the initial impact of a drum or whatever, an explosion. And the corresponding wavefront that comes after that the mics pick up, but you usually don't hear because it just winds up being a or it's not there.
You're trying to reproduce a highly energetic event. You need a lot of energy.
A lot of energy, yeah. Or like you said, listening to a rocket, trying to play back a rocket going off, even at a distance. Hearing that plume, that flame, the way it burns, and it's got that gurgle to it or whatever. I don't even know. Is there a word for that?
I haven't heard one. Presumably there is.
There's got to be something.
Yeah.
But there seems to be a lot of regularity to it. It sounds almost like a bag flapping in the breeze or something like that,
right.
Which is strange because you wouldn't think that this device would be able to create such a noise like that. It's a continuous flow of hot gases, and for some reason that's how it sounds.
Probably at the nozzle it's not like that. I mean, where it comes out, but my guess is just the sheer heat of it and what it's doing to the air around it is changing the sound. The heating, superheating of the air.
Presumably there's some
like
sort of
lightning
effect that's causing that.
Yeah,
like lightning,
Yeah, it's the same deal.
It's an incredible amount of energy in a pretty small space.
You're burning the air, and the air is expanding so quickly that it's more of a random event, I think, than...
Well, it's like a sonic boom, It's like the air can't get out of the way quick enough, so it goes boom.
Yeah. How do those sound played back? I don't think I've
I
ever
don't know.
sonic
I don't
boom
think
on
I've
a
ever
playback.
listened to one.
Yeah. I don't think there's anyone who has a sonic boom in a frickin' song.
It would be hard to reproduce.
If anyone knows about that, let us know in the comments.
Those YouTube videos I've seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that won't cut it, though. We need
It's not really
you're
necessarily.
watching on like a laptop or iPad.
Yeah, that won't
Right.
work. Yeah. But, you can see where, I mean, and my experience in general has been with dealing with people for decades, is that most people don't really know what good bass sounds like. They really don't, because they just aren't, like you said before, you don't experience it in life, compared to music.
It's hard to come across.
Unless you're a drummer, and even if you're a drummer, you might not really be listening to the same thing that we are, because you're busy playing the drums. You're not really picking up on.
Well, presumably you'll be used to the visceral impact, the feel of the bass, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's exactly what the thing from your perspective is going to sound like outwardly, right? If you're playing back a finished recording, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to sound precisely like it was if you were sitting next to the drum, because usually that's not how it's mic'd. That's not how it's intended to sound.
Yep.
So it is difficult to know what's right unless you hear a huge amount of systems and you hear some references in real life. But unfortunately, bass seems to be the thing that's hardest to do perfectly. And there seems to be no approximation for some reason. There seems to be very difficult to come across something that's pretty good or pretty close. For the most part, most things aren't very good. And when they start getting good, it seems to more or less happen all at once for whatever reason. Like if you want something that has good levels and good sounding bass, that seems to only really work out in a very small percentage of gear. It just seems to be so incredibly rare to come across.
Yeah, bottom line is that it's a lot. You've really got to know your shit to be able to put together a system that can produce proper bass, accurate bass in a room. And then even with the headphone, I mean, our 1266 is noted for having the best bass in the world in terms of a headphone. And there's a number of tricks we played to be able to get away with that. But not only that, not only are tricks involved, it's the design of the driver, it's the strength of the magnet, it's the sheer amount of power that it requires to drive it properly. I mean, all these things are, demands that we engineered into the headphones so it could do bass like that. That was one of our biggest goals when we designed a 1266. We wanted to be able to do accurate, powerful bass. And it worked out. But yeah, bottom line though is that with headphones it's difficult to do because they're just really not designed to move a lot of air. That's required to do low frequencies like that in real life.
Headphones are traditionally designed around low energy. They're usually set up so that you have a good seal, and the energy that the driver produces is coupled very tightly to your ear with high efficiency. But the trouble there is there's potentially a moderate discrepancy between the energy required to replicate real life in the low end to the high end. And it takes quite a bit of energy to get that very powerful feel from low frequencies, and really not so much in the mid-range and up. The power requirements usually are very, very trivial for most headphones. You can give them 10, 20 milliwatts, maybe 100, and it's plenty. But if you want to replicate a rocket launch, an explosion, that's just not going to cut
the
it.
Dynamic range
You run into physics.
That's required in the low frequencies. Physics.
It's just you physically need to move air, and quite a bit of it fast.
Yeah, and there's no way around that.
Well, I guess IEMs, you're physically like putting something in your ear. That's
Right.
Yeah.
It's a better coupling, so you need less energy.
But that maximizes coupling because you're
Right.
sealing it to the ear canal. Right. Yeah. But even then, there's
Even
no
then,
way.
it's still very challenging.
There's no way that bass out of that thing is going to sound like it would in real life. It can't do it. I mean, it could do it to a higher level than some other things in audio playback. And you certainly are avoiding all sorts of room issues, but now you're dealing with the ear canal and its variability. So, I don't think it's much of an issue in the bottom end for ear canals. I think it's more of an issue in the mids and upper frequencies.
Well, especially if you've got custom IEMs,
Yeah, which is your best bet. Well, it'll give you the best seal.
Yeah.
But then again, the reason you got to get a seal out of them is because they're using a few milliwatts to create this energy. And again, the acoustic power that's there is tiny, relatively speaking.
It seems to be more or less an intrinsic issue or limitation with the traditional design of drivers and headphones. So what you usually find is anything that's active, they EQ the bass up to get the expected response, because most people find that they want more than they have with bass. That's a very common complaint.
Yeah, you ever been in a rental car? First thing you
Always
see.
the bass is cranked, right?
Yeah, really.
Everyone.
It still ain't enough.
Yeah.
And it's
Sounds
still
like
not
shit
enough.
too, but
But see, that's difficult because not only do you not have particularly loud bass and people want more, but it sounds bad because now you're pushing this hardware way too far. This hardware isn't made to have this much exaggerated bass compared to its design. So you're trying everything you can to get bass out of it, and it's just screaming. It's not doing a very good job, and it gets flabby and mushy, and it sounds slow and anemic. So you have the energy maybe, but it doesn't sound proper.
Yeah, so really, to boil it down, I mean, what accurate bass sounds like is a bit of a difficult thing to explain, difficult thing to experience unless you are given a system or a headphone that can do that, a system and a headphone, I should say, because you need both. You need the drivers, speakers, and you need the system that capable of playing it up with that at that level of headroom and dynamic range. So it's a bit of a kind of like what is flat, what is real bass is a difficult thing to know unless you've heard it.
And it's a little open-ended because some people will think bass is crazy high on something and other people will think it's way too low, not enough.
Yeah.
So it really depends on taste and perspective. It's one of those things that unless you're talking about something that you could replicate in real life, it's very hard to know what's right. And there's a lot of times where the bass is exaggerated in the music, either because they expect people want it, they expect it'll make it more popular, or maybe just because they think in your playback chain you're not going to have enough power to do it right, and so they crank it up before it gets to your ear.
Well, that brings us to the pro world, right? Which is like
Power.
And they have EQ. They can do whatever they want. They're at the beginning end of the chain. They're mastering the music. They're
You mean
they're setting the settings. Yeah, at the recording center pro. Yeah, I meant. Oh, sorry, I meant. Yeah.
I'm talking like
on playback.
concerts, yeah.
Well, yeah, that's a whole different
Racks
ballgame.
of amps.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the real limitation is power because it's outdoors.
Sometimes.
I mean, you got to push a lot of air outside to be able to create bass. You need a lot of air pressure because there's no room to help you out there. You have infinite space that you're moving air, and that's a lot of air you got to move when you're talking about being hundreds of feet away from the source, or more. But yeah, anyway, it's but what I was talking about on the pro side in terms of recording chain too. They set the levels too. They can make the bass drum sound louder or quieter on a per mic basis and so on. But so that's a variable as well. But in the end, though, I mean, accurate bass is extremely difficult. It's an elusive thing. It's difficult to do accuracy and depth of bass, and then there's bass within the bass, which you don't really hear people talk about much, but the bass within the bass is just like there's detail within the bass that most people never extract. Yeah, I mean the rolling of the drum skin. The skin when you hit it, impact it on a drum, rolls. It's a decay. It's like water in a pond, and it's wild when you look at it in a slow motion. I know there's some YouTube videos on that, and it's wild what it does when they're hitting it hard. Cymbals are the same way. I think we talked about
ripple.
Yeah, the metal just goes on slow motion. It's like, and the mics are picking that up, but a lot of playback systems aren't capable of playing back that wavefront.
Yeah, they're not perfect sine wave crashes. It's like
it's the distortion of the. It's kind of like when a train's coming at you versus going away. You're creating that different wavefront.
Doppler.
Yeah, it's like a Doppler. It's a low wave Doppler built into the device, into the cymbal or the drum.
They're pretty complex.
It's not a straight wave,
right?
And the mic's picking it up, but most playback systems can't recreate it. It congeals it into one tone or one frequency. But I've heard it. It can be played back. It can be done, and you've got to have a lot of things optimized. You could do it with our headphones. You could do it with some really good speaker systems, with some really good systems. You can do it.
I was just thinking a really hard thing to play back. Top fuel drag car.
Oh yeah,
because that's like 10,000 horsepower. So it's physically 15 megawatts or something that's creating that.
Yeah.
So to reproduce
coming out the exhaust pipes.
Right. Yeah.
I wonder what the actual energy is coming out the exhaust.
It's got to be
because the efficiency isn't particularly high, so a lot of that energy is being emitted as noise.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty loud in the stands. It's got to be about 150, 120 dB.
It's loud, yeah.
So, yeah, it's almost as bad as our
doing that with a speaker.
Yeah, right.
That'd be a
significant
array.
I can't tell the difference from the real event.
I guess it is theoretically possible, but wow, the power you would need.
Yeah, I don't think anyone makes a speaker that'll handle that kind of.
You would need quite a few.
That kind of power.
More than one.
Insanity is what it would be, but maybe
a lot of real small ones because that's a real sharp noise coming out of those pipes. It's not like a.
You probably need a combination of all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, it'd be like 2,000 8-inch woofers.
Yeah, just a wall.
Yeah, plugged right off the mains, right off a pole pig.
We couldn't even. Yeah, I don't even know where you get that much power from.
That'd be a pretty good amount of power. That'd be a good start. But anyway, yeah, we're going off tangent.
Right.
We might as well build our own buildings for our amplifiers, like in the past video. It's our imaginary system here, because that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, you need some Krell level engineering for that.
The Krell.
I got some ideas.
Yeah, the Krell is in the Krell from the Forbidden Planet Krell.
That's right.
Yeah, a lot of gauges to the 10th power. That's what we need.
Yeah. Yes, the gauges.
Yes,
that's what helps.
Yeah. Well, anyway, Christmas is upon us, so it's this video is, I guess, going to be shown right around that time. And so we should probably wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Happy holidays for everyone.
Yeah.
And everyone be well. Stay safe. Drive safe. If you got bad weather, shrug it off. If you have good weather, enjoy it while you can. Take care, everyone. Thank you.